All right, let's go ahead and get going. So I'm Chris Daly, and I am one of the partners at Agile Meridian. And with us today, we have Mr. Michael Franz, who is going to talk about lean portfolio management. We at Agile Meridian, half of our partners are safe folks, and the other half aren't. And so we have decided in this, starting in 2023, we have become a silver partner. So we're going to start offering public as well as private safe classes. And so we've known Michael for a number of years, and he is going to talk to us about lean portfolio management. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So Ali, we're going to have a pretty close group here. I think Ali and Brent. This is just a small group today, so I'm gonna oh, we got someone joining in. Hold on one second. I'm hoping to spend the time and really, as we go over this very high level of lean portfolio management, I'd like to spend more time listening to you if you have questions. So at any point that you have some questions, please let's make it more conversational than presentation. The presentation isn't very deep. Once again, it's a very high level, and I've built in some stuff there to get some interaction and hopefully get some feedback from you. So 1 second here. There we go. So if you look on the screen, you can see we're using this tool called menti.com, and there's a code there. So if you go there right now on your web, you can go there on your browser and go to that site and enter that code. It's going to log you into this presentation. And the way you can do that, you'll see down here in the bottom right, there's a thumbs up. And this allows you in a remote setting to interact. We're going to have some word clouds, and there's going to be some questions that you're going to directly input into in order for us to kind of go through this. If you can go there now, just go there real quick, put the code in. Yep, there you go. Give me that thumbs up down there in the bottom right. That lets me know that you're able to access Menti. And then I can see, you know, there are 3 or 4 of us on the call. So if we can get 1 or 2 more people logged in there, if it's not working for you, just let us know and we'll help you solve that problem. And correct me if I mispronounce, Nachiket, is that the correct pronunciation of your name?
Hey, yes, I just logged in.
Yes. Did I say your name right?
Yes, thanks for checking.
Yes, of course. Well, correct me if I don't, please. It's a pet peeve of mine. Good. We have another thumbs up down there. Thank you so much. Are you able to get there, Nachika? Are you able to get to Menti okay?
Yes, I just signed in using the code.
Thank you. Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on. It looks like we've got, I don't know if Brent's actually able to interact. He may be driving and just listening to us or something like that. So
Michael, you can also, if you don't want to use your browser, you can use your phone. Just pull up your camera, shoot the QR code. That'll take you right into.
Yes, there we go. Nope, we got a third person there. Thank you. So excellent. All right. 1 moment here. It looks like I'm lagging a little bit. Sorry about that. Let's do it this way. All right, so let me move this out of the way. Let's talk about what we know today as a lean portfolio. You're all here for lean portfolio. What is a lean portfolio? Maybe how we manage it. How do we get started in this conversation around lean portfolio? In your Menti, you should be able to put in some words there, and we're going to display those words on the screen. What do you already know about this idea of a lean portfolio? Throw some words in there and send them our way, if you could. What is lean? What is a lean portfolio? What does that mean to you already? And let me know if you're having any problems with the tool. Yes, I like that one. Keep them coming. Doesn't exist in most orgs. We're starting to see that change. collection of projects that add value. That's good. That's good. What else? Often the loudest voice. Yes. We'll get into a little bit of that as we tease out how can a healthy portfolio be managed, right? Difficult to manage data, consistent, very, very true, very true. Any others? Just any other thoughts? So when you think about a lean portfolio, looks like we've got some ideas here. Portfolios exist in every org, I would argue. It's what we do with it or how we define it, right? So lean portfolios are what don't really exist in most orgs. I would agree. Our portfolios are often, we got more answers coming. Our portfolios are often kind of, they grow kind of holistically as time goes on. They're hierarchically aligned and organizational, structurally aligned, and they can become very unlean, we'll say cluttered, unfocused, perhaps ineffective or inefficient portfolios. Absolutely, it's a collection of projects managed by individuals. Often the loudest voice are the ones who get the most traction. Very true. Contrary to traditional budgeting, that's an interesting. Can someone share a little bit when you say that? I like that we're going in that direction. What do you think by contrary to traditional budgeting?
So I put that one in there,
Okay, good.
and it was because I just went through it with a client where they started their budget process in September. We went through and they started out with a really great approach, right? We're going to lay out all the projects. We're going to decide what we're going to do for 2023. They put their budgets together, and then I watched them go through and essentially just take it and just start scraping off percents, right? And they didn't, and so we got to one point about the end of January, and of course all budgets don't get approved till the end of the year. And what they did was what we've done is they've gone through and they've cut so much out that they weren't really getting anything done. And so, and they were having a hard time identifying what was going to get done. And, the traditional budget cycle has it, you're going to allocate money and it's going to go, and we're going to allocate it by cost center. And we don't look at it in terms of priority typically when we start cutting. Yeah,
I like that thinking. There's got to be a better way to do it, right? At the end of the day, I mean, that's where most of our organizations are trapped, kind of in that cycle. And I think you're absolutely correct. Lean portfolio breaks that old model because that model doesn't serve us well, right?
Right.
So often too large for the number of resources. I like that perspective as well. Portfolios our collection, I like it. You have a collection of projects, absolutely true. Projects are definitely the work product of a portfolio. And if we don't manage them well, if we don't manage them in a lean way, the resources, the number of people and assets within a portfolio becomes very difficult, and you're going to be overwhelmed, I think, because there's just so many, too large. It's just too large of an organization, not well managed. I like there's a question mark here, strategic goals review question mark. Sure. A lean portfolio, in my mind, when I think about it, and we'll go into a little bit more here shortly, really is tying strategy to execution, right? When you think about the big picture of the strategy of an enterprise, how do you get from strategy and execute on that down in the portfolios, down into the groups of teams and squads that are trying to deliver value? How do you do that? But you have to review those goals. You have to understand what those goals are, and then of course tie execution to that. We'll go into a little bit more detail there. So one of the reasons I like to ask this question first is really just to connect with where you're at in the room, those of you here in this group, what it means to you when you think about these words lean portfolio. We're going to go into quite a bit of context around that. What I would like to do next is challenging for this one. You're going to see there's these pain points. Let me explain them to you. And I'd like to see in the room where you prioritize these pain points as applicable to you, most applicable in your context today. So if this means something to you, you'll see the first one there, long cycle times on large initiatives. So you've got all these projects coming into this portfolio, which I think we called out in the previous slide. Is it taking you long periods of time to get them done and move on to the next big project that comes along? That's one pain point. Work gets done, but the key needles do not move. So are you in your current context today delivering a lot of work down in the programs and in the teams and the squads, but those strategic goals, the big needles that say success, are you even aware of those, or are they moving in the right direction? That would be the second pain point. The third pain point, budgets or projects are difficult to change on new information. I love this perspective because some of the stuff you called out in the previous slide very much so plays into that. You know, too many resources to manage, disorganized budget system that maybe isn't as responsive as it needs to be. And so when you learn something new or some new priority comes along, it's difficult to pivot in that direction. Is that a pain point that you're seeing? Yeah, go ahead, start bringing it. Thank you. And then finally, demand is a fire hose in the face of capacity. I love that one. There's just so much demand and not enough capacity, and it just seems like you can never get ahead. You can never manage priority. You can never manage that capacity and the demand capacity in a way that works well. So go ahead, if you just rank those, and that'll give me an idea. We'll talk a little bit about that in your context, hopefully. Looks like we've got long cycle times on large initiatives. That seems to be the first one there. Budgets or projects are difficult to change on new information. There we go. Okay, so yes, we've got a tie between the second and third one. Work gets done, but the key needles do not move. Budgets or projects are difficult to change. Demand is a fire hose in the face of capacity. Okay, good. And then our first primary one up there, it takes a long time to get things done, right? And maybe that's where we talk. Is there anyone on the call that wouldn't mind giving us an example? Could you share for just the first one, just that long cycle times on a large initiatives? Just give us an example, Ali or Nachiket or Brent, if you're able to. Any examples that you'd be willing to share of where that's really impacted you in your current context?
Well, for me, long cycle times affect us because people get moved in and out of projects. So we don't have because the project is so long, our teams change. So it often feels like we're redoing work or rethinking those priorities or reorganizing those objectives and goals. So that's definitely a huge pain point when we do have the long cycles.
Yeah, you get some brain drain in there, I think. That's what I always call it when, oh, my SME just moved on to another initiative or another project. Oh, where are you going? I needed that person, right? I see that happen quite frequently in some of the organizations that I've served. Nachiket, you want to add anything to that? A different perspective? All right, we can move on. That's fine. So when you think about these pain points, right? What we're trying to do with a lean portfolio is solve some of them in some way. Now, as Chris introduced me, I'm an SPC. Actually, I'm an SPCT candidate for Scaling Agile, and so I'm a SAFE guy. So what I do is not just SAFE. I've used several different methodologies and frameworks out there, but these days I largely circle around Scaled Agile because that's where my clients are, all the clients that I've served in the industry. And I've served 11 of them in the last decade of Fortune 500, these bigger organizations, and the majority of them have been Scaled Agile. What we're trying to do, though, is it doesn't matter what framework. Framework is really the least important part of the conversation. What matters is can we put something into practice, something into place to reduce some of this pain, right? The long cycle times, not moving the needles, or even sometimes it's not even that you're not moving the needle. You can't even see the needle to begin with because a lot of organizations just don't have a clear understanding of what what's our success criteria at the strategic level, right? You might understand if I do this acceptance criteria on this story or this feature, I've done something that's awesome, but what did it really have the impact, the strategic impact that it needed to? And so that's where we're trying to go with this notion of lean portfolio management. That's a lot smaller than I thought it would be. I'm going to have to make that bigger. Hopefully you can see that big picture there. If you can't see that very well, you can go to scaledagileFramework.com. I just want to touch on this very quickly. This lets me know for the rest of this webinar where I want to spend my time. If I have people who are very knowledgeable in Scaled Agile, what do you know about SAFe? Throw a comment or two in. That helps me understand where you are. And if we have a lot of people who are comfortable in Scaled Agile and they understand the construct, that's great. I'll take that into account as we move forward. And if not, that's fine too. We're not going to push SAFe on you today. What we're going to do is talk about this notion within the shadow of some of these frameworks. So what do you know about SAFe? Throw a quick comment up there. Are you familiar with it? Are you using it today? Is it something, yeah, we are actually using Scaled Agile, or you're not? That's perfectly okay. Just throw a comment up there. You can even give me your opinion of it. I like opinions of Scaled Agile. I'm probably one of their biggest critics as well. So that's okay. Enterprise-wide, yes, thank you. Absolutely. It touches across the whole enterprise business agility cycle. I do like that perspective. It's a lot, and it can often terrify people if when they first see it. Any other perspectives on SAFe? And if you're not strong on SAFe, you can just put that, not strong on SAFe, not using it today. This will help me understand. Scalable, absolutely, yeah. Trained, okay, good. So we've got some training in SAFe. Anyone else? We'll give just a minute or two here, just a minute. Lean, yeah. You can get debates on that, whether Scaled Agile is actually lean. I love that one. That's awesome. Any last comments? We'll go ahead and move on here. All right, it does inflexible. Yes, rigid. Yes, I've heard those comments. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that, because I happen to be a Scaled Agile guy, and I agree with those statements. Absolutely agree with those statements. There's a big problem, especially in implementation of the model, right? And so we have to be very careful. But thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. All right, so let me move us down here. That lets me know kind of where we're at. Here's a bigger rendition of this picture. I want to show this to you only in the context of, when you think a lot of times about lean portfolio management, if you look out there in the interwebs and you go out and Google lean portfolio, you're going to find some commentary all over the place. Gartner is a big expression, if you will. They've used lean portfolio in some of their things. You'll see it in Atlassian if you use any of the Atlassian tools. And if you're looking at the thought leadership around lean portfolio, they often, if you look at their references and look underneath the hood, they're often pointing right back here to this big picture. And so I say that because I'm going to make this picture go to the background, and we're probably not going to look at that picture again, but I want to make sure you understand some of the reference points, right? When we talk about lean portfolio, we're talking about over here on the left-hand side, you can see these competencies here in Scaled Agile. They have an entire competency in scaling Agile specifically around lean portfolio management. You're going to see as they bring out the practices to solve some of those pain points, all the risks and all the advantages that we just talked about on the slide before are absolutely true. It can be rigid, especially in its implementation. It is intended to take you to a lean place. And it is the starting point, unfortunately, for most enterprises is not lean, very, very cluttered, very disorganized. And most enterprises, I always like to say, are just as complex as this picture you see on the screen already, even before we got here. And what we're trying to do is connect you with some practices and behaviors to become more organized, to become leaner, but with the understanding that we also have to scale across an entire enterprise. And so these practices need to connect. They need to connect down into programs, and whether you're doing Scrum with Scrum or Agile release trains, they need to connect up into the enterprise planning system, the budgeting system, as Chris called out. There's a lot of complexity in here. And I don't want you to be intimidated by that. We're going to tease it out specifically around lean portfolio, but I just wanted you to know that where those foundations are. If that makes sense to you, or you're connecting with what I'm saying, you can see in the bottom right hand, there's some ways you can give me feedback. So this Menti tool is amazing. Yeah, there you go. You can give me a thumbs up if you agree. If you disagree, I love that. That means, but if you hit disagree, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to know, hey, you've got a different perspective. And share that so we can all learn from that. We can all go from there. If you are really aligned, or you really love what's going on, you can hit a love. If you have a question, you can hit the question mark, and I, of course, will pause to make sure we can field your question. So everybody comfortable with that? This is about all you need to worry about in the big picture today. They call this the safe big picture. I call it the safe terrifying picture. You either love or hate it picture. I've had a lot of experiences with it, and I'm very comfortable making it go away. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least point out where this conversation lives in this enterprise. All right, I'm going to move us on from there. So when you think about SDLC, what some people call waterfall, that software development life cycle versus a lean agile life cycle, I want to call this out because when we talk about lean portfolios, we need to understand a little bit of the differences. The old school way, which, by the way, we delivered many wonderful things over the last 30 years using SDLC. There is no, you're not going to, this coach is not one of the coaches who poo-poos all of SDLC. There's plenty of function currently going on where SDLC has applied some lean thinking and some agile thinking, but it's still SDLC. And so we want to make sure we understand what's the pain point we're trying to solve and what's the leanest way we can solve it, right? And so you can kind of see on the left-hand side here, we've got this kind of traditional approach, and on the right-hand side, we've got this lean agile approach. And you can see over there, people are organized in functional silos, temporary project teams, right? The idea of our organizational structure that impacts very much so how we fund, how we budget, and it impacts how we plan the work, prioritize the work, right? And when we get into the lean agile side of things, we want to make sure we're organizing around value. You get into the next one, funding projects and project cost accounting. That's a challenge. And what we found is all the pain points above that you guys highlighted, they come out of project mindedness, project funding, the project practices. Let's fund something up front. It's going to take us a long time to get it done. Projects are too big on many cases, and we're gonna review that maybe on an annual budget. And so that's when we decide all of our projects. When we know the least, we're going to make all these big decisions, right? And then we're going to go through and we're going to manage and track that in this kind of phase gated approach. If you'll remember phase gates, that's like we're going to do requirements first, then we're going to do some design, then we're going to do some work. And then we're going to do some delivery, right? Maybe some testing. And what we've learned is we've got to move away from that. In the funding model, we've got to fund collections or teams of teams that are organized around products and services, right? The real value that you're delivering. A lot of times today, we're organized around our organizational hierarchy. Who's the leader, right? We have tech, we have these functional silos, product and business, and then we're going to organize our teams in these, in these vertical lines, these siloed lines, and we have to change that. And so the way we do that is we create this notion of value streams. We fund those value streams, and we get into some things like lean budgets and guardrails, where the decision making is moved down into the organization, and those budgets, a lean budget, a lean portfolio, to Chris's point earlier, is not an annual function. In fact, in a wonderful place we would love to be is probably quarterly, but at least a couple of times a year, a little more often than annually. Obviously, there's some advantage there. Everybody still with me? We're okay? Chris?
Hey, Michael, I'd just add one thing.
Yes, please.
Going back to the traditional approach, and I'm one that can absolutely criticize the traditional approach because I lived it for 30 plus years, right? And the thing about that I always am amazed by under the traditional approach is the concept of sunk cost, right? So when we go in, and once you get approval to start a project, you get to a certain point that it doesn't matter how much off you are within reason. you're just going to keep going, because they're going to view it as, they're not going to view it as they're going to say, well, we've sunk $2 million in this. You need another $1 million or $2 million. We'll lose that $2 million if we don't keep going. And that sunk cost enters into their mind, and it really can fundamentally screw up what an organization's doing, where you might be trying, you might be overextending, right? You might be going, you might want to get, instead of getting 80% done and getting the most value, you're trying to get to 100%. And it may be too expensive.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. That is the life, that is the life lived as well. Yeah, I'm with you there. I see we got one thumb up there. Welcome. I think someone missed, or maybe they joined us and dropped. I thought someone had just joined us, but welcome. And so we'll go ahead and continue on. I see we got a thumb up. If you have any questions or you want to interject, feel free to do so. So, what we're doing is a contrast between SDLC and Lean Agile, talking, the traditional approach over there on the side. And we've talked a little bit about budgeting and how, we're organizing value stream budgets are adjusted dynamically. What we're saying there, and what Chris is really calling out, is in old project mindedness, we couldn't pivot very easily. One, to his point, we sunk costs. Sunk costs is a huge problem. Also, the initiative is so big. If it was a little bit smaller, at least if we're going to have sunk costs, then we still get some flexibility because the initiatives are smaller. But we usually bundle these things into huge annual size projects, just like our budgeting model. And I think that is also, when you start thinking about the contrast between traditional and lean, what we're trying to do is learn stuff faster. We've got to apply the learnings in the organization in every way, right? A lean portfolio is a portfolio that's continuously learning and evaluating. Is my investment in the right place? Is my execution on strategy what I thought it was a quarter or 6 months ago? What I've learned things now. What we know is that we have to account for the learning, the revealing that happens in these initiatives, these projects, and in these products and services, or we're just too slow to respond to the changing nature around us. And everything that you see on this screen is from where, in my opinion, it facilitates that. When you think about a lean agile approach, I'm going to do things in a smaller slice. I'm MVP mindset. We're going to do things, and we're going to do things more often in smaller sets, so that when we learn something, we can make a new decision. We can change direction, right? And that's the ability at the heart of all of this. Remove those impediments, speed things up, get smaller, get leaner, so that the products and services that bring value to our enterprise, whatever organization we're in, we're seeing them, we're able to tune them and react, and then of course deliver them in that kind of measurable, repeated, sustainable process. Does that make sense with everybody? Chris, anything you want to add to that? I see we got one thumbs up. If you can hit that Menti thumbs up, that lets us know. I got two. If it really makes sense. Also, don't forget, if you have questions, you can hit the little question mark there, and I'll make sure to if you don't want to interrupt, you're of course welcome to interrupt in the remote world. That's perfectly acceptable meeting etiquette. So, all right. So those are kind of the contrast between SDLC, Lean, and Agile. When we think about lean portfolio management, there's a couple of pillars I like to call into context here when you're thinking about these, because this comes from Scaled Agile, but remember, it doesn't matter what framework you're using, but these are the kinds of conversations that if you're trying to manage a portfolio, we probably should be fielding and having, no matter what model you use, no matter what ceremony or practice you put into place. You think about strategy and investment funding, right? This is making sure that we're meeting often enough, our budgets make sense, and we want to make sure that our portfolios are aligned to the strategy from the enterprise. If you've got a board of directors or a management committee or C-1, C-2 suite that's out there, they've got some big ideas and some big needles that they want to move, right? They want to increase. Maybe they want to increase sales by 5% in 2023, or they want to reduce waste in their government institutions by 6% and blah, 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 right? They're going to have some big needles, and we have to make sure at the portfolio level that we're aligning to that. We have the money necessary, funding buys capacity, right? And so just want to make sure that we're aligning to that. So that's one function. And you can see there on the screen, you can see that strategy, investment, funding, and then there's a recommendation of who's participating in that conversation, right? You can see there's enterprise executives, there's some business owners. And when they say enterprise architect, what they mean is the voice of technology. You want to make sure the right technologist is part of that as well. Depending on your org structure, that could be an architect, that could be a solution, or an enterprise architect, depending on what types of architects you have in your organization. And then you can see we go into lean governance, going to the left there. You need some kind of audit. You need metrics, you need compliance. Every organization, whether you're finance, whether you're a government industry, or your healthcare, most organizations out there have to have some form of compliance. And so what we want to do it is at a portfolio level, right? We're translating enterprise strategy, whether it's OKRs, objectives with key results, or enterprise initiatives, into some form of work, whether it's projects, or it might be, in my world, it might be epics. We're translating that strategy, OKRs, into epics, and then features and stories if you're in a traditional or more scaling agile model. Those kinds of things have to occur, and you need some people to make sure we've got oversight. We're making the right decisions. Transparency is the kind of the theme of the day when you're in lean governance. And you can see they have this notion of an agile product management office, right? There's a product management, very similar in many respects to our old project management offices. And you want to make sure you have representation there. If you're in an agile organization or a safe organization, we hope that those are like-minded agilists who are helping manage the products and services and helping some of the compliance and the metrics. I see there's a comment in there, having the right people, Ali, having the right people at the right meetings is a pain point. Often it's who available or who agrees with my very, very good call out, Ali. And one of the things we spend a lot of time in my current life, I spend a lot of time working with leadership teams to build the appropriate, we call it a portfolio leadership team, a PLT in my current world, but very much so we fight against that pain point constantly. Chris, do you have anything you want to add on that pain point?
No, you got it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
that covered it really well.
Yeah, we're gonna, and when there's some takeaways at the end. If lean portfolio makes sense to you, want to go a little deeper, you want to get started, you want to help foster the conversation in your organizations, we'll talk a little bit about that, Ali, in a little bit more detail. So you've got lean governance, right? And you can see that there's a product management organization, you'll notice the trifecta here is pretty strong in these first two. You've got someone representing product, you've got someone representing the stakeholders, right? The business owners or the stakeholders, and you've got someone representing technology, right? And so those are important when you talk about who should be at the right people at the right meeting. We really have to have a collaborative voice from each of those areas, kind of crossing the silos, the organizational. And this is what we really mean by organizing around value, meaning the collaboration is across, it's horizontal. It means the right people across all of the right slices, if you will, are participating. And this last little piece here, Agile portfolio operations. In scaling Agile, we use this. This is where a lot of times your coaches live over here. There's a Lean Agile Center of Excellence. Your Scrum Masters, your facilitators of the process, right? Where we live is in that space. And we're there to make sure, one, that we're constantly retrospecting. We're constantly looking for improvement. Continuous improvement is kind of the name of the day there. We're making sure that your Scrum Masters and your RTEs, release train engineers, these kind of Scrum Masters of Scrum Masters, if you will, that are operating at a program level. Your Scrum Masters are operating at a team level. And then you may have some coaches operating at the portfolio level, or even just Agile leaders if you've unlocked Agile leadership in your organization. And this is where you have this other piece. And we believe, when you put all these three areas together, you're pretty much covering all the bases and how to get to this idea of a lean portfolio. Does that make sense with everybody? Any questions, comments? Chris, you want to throw some?
Yeah, I'd throw in one thing. I think it's really important to understand delegation, right? Because it doesn't do you any good to have for example, a LACE, right? A portfolio management group in the operations area, and nobody in there is empowered to make any decisions. We have to go back to the executives, right? Same thing with the governance, right? Governance really is about, instead of, in a traditional environment, it's, I've got a stage gate, I've got to get approval. It's got to be reviewed before I move on because, and this is Chris's sarcastic comment, we don't trust you, right? We don't trust you, so therefore you have to get our approval to move on, as opposed to what most people want to operate under, right? Which is a trust but verify, right? Allow people to go ahead and make those decisions and then talk about, after those decisions are made, why did you make that decision? What could we do to improve? And so I think delegation is something that really gets lost in the organization. And to Allie's point, right, having the right people in the meeting at the right time to make the decision, you also have to add to it, I've got to be in every meeting because, I don't trust that my boss is going to make the right decision, or I don't trust that Allie is going to make the right decision for our group, right? And that delegation, that lack of trust, if you don't have that, this all falls apart pretty quick.
Yeah. I really like that you called that out, because for me, that's one of the, it's one of those core principles at the heart of everything, not just lean portfolio, but everything in the organization. And I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Any questions before we move on? Looks like we're okay there. So I'm going to move us on to the next thing. All right. So now a little interaction. I think, Allie, you might be the only one with us. Little interaction from you there. Brent, I don't know if Brent's able to actually interact with the tool. How would you rank these mindset principles or ideals? So when you think about it, what we have here is five, they're principle mindsets that get into this concept of lean portfolio. The first one there is maximize the throughput of value. So that means we're gonna focus on prioritizing the most important thing, right? Not everything can get done. Remember, we were talking about that waterfall, or excuse me, that fire hose in the face of demand in the face of capacity. The idea here is we've got to make sure we're focusing on the right things at the right time. The next part of it is prevent bottlenecks to flow in a portfolio. So the next mindset that we're trying to get people that are going to participate in this LPM mindset is we want to look for bottlenecks in the systems, the whole system. In this particular place, we're looking at epics and features and stories kind of flowing through a portfolio. The next one is bringing work to the people, not moving people to the work. This is one, Allie, that you called right out, right, about people leaving your project because it's a big initiative. What we're trying to create in a lean portfolio is that people are stable. Teams are stable organizations. They retain their learning. They retain the trust that they build because they're not getting moved. And you just bring the work to them. You stop moving them over to this next initiative and funding model. They are funded right where they are. They sit right where they are. They learn, they work together, they build this powerful, high-performing team. And then when you want to bring them, you can bring them any work. They'll learn and do what's necessary to put that work, to deliver that work. The fourth one is focusing on business value instead of managing costs and projects, right? And we spend a lot of time, I know in my current world, with an annual budget process that we have, we know from pretty much from the end of October, early November, all the way to February, March next month, we're going to be in a budget cycle. We're waiting for budget decisions to be made. We're cutting budgets. We're, the things that Chris described. Absolutely, that's where we spend our time. So thank you. You've got that in there. Focusing on business value instead of managing costs and projects. I like that. Maximize the throughput of value is the second one. Bringing work to the people, right? Yep. Examining portfolio programs for continuous improvement, and then prevent bottlenecks to flow in a portfolio. So Allie, when you say focusing on business value, can you give us an example of where that might not be working well for you today? Would you mind sharing?
No. I think where the pain really happens is when we get those sponsors or that leadership assigned, and leadership isn't aligned with what they're hoping to get out of a certain project, or they're expectations of what the cost is going to be doesn't align. So really the focusing on the value rather than on the cost or on the actual project would really help push through the value and maybe even create more value to all of our customers and the people who are going to be impacted by whatever it is we're trying to implement.
That's really a really strong point. In your current context, do you, when those decisions are made, like when the leader or the sponsor, executive sponsor, or that leader they're making those decisions about what we're going to work on, what project, their project expectations, as you said, are you included in those conversations? Is that a conversation that happens somewhere else and then it's kind of injected into your world and you just have to, or are you able to influence those conversations today?
Nope, not able to influence. And we don't really have an aligned portfolio. Every leader has their own portfolio. So then we end up with, who's going to manage, you know, the various portfolios and prioritize that work. Yeah,
we see that. I see that a lot. I see that. That's good. We'll go into that a little bit. Some of the practices here in just a second about what might work a little better, right? What would bring that conversation to a new place. Chris, did you want to add something there?
Nope.
All right, so let's go ahead and get down in here. So what does a lean portfolio system do? When you think about, you're going to see some words, we were just talking about that, Allie. How do we get those conversations in a better place? And how do we start doing some things differently in an organization that says, yeah, we need lean portfolio. We need to figure this out, right? This is just an example. This is a very basic example. Mostly what we do is we break this down even into more granular events, but at a high level, you can kind of see what we're talking about here. Maybe we do budgeting twice a year instead of once a year, right? Maybe that's it. You know, there's some smaller, leaner organizations that can do it quarterly. That might be a little bit big to chew on for many complex organizations, at least early on. But maybe instead of annual budgeting, we're doing budgeting twice a year. And you can see that there in the participatory budgeting boxes. And Allie, to your point, that strategic portfolio review is some kind of engagement where we're bringing the right people, right, to your other point, right people to the right meetings. And we're having that negotiation. Maybe it's just a conversation between peers. It could be between what I said earlier was the trifecta. Maybe it's the business owners, the technologists, and the product people, or project people, maybe if you're not truly product people yet. And it's a conversation once a quarter. You can see they're recommending. And remember, this is a recommendation. It doesn't have to look like this, but it gives you an idea of how does lean portfolio unfold? What are these practices of where we could take this? And once a quarter, we're having a conversation about what's important from a strategy perspective and what does that look like? And we're also looking at the metrics. We're saying, are we on track? Maybe, you know, if you're doing a hybrid model where you're still doing project and you're doing a little agile with project, which most of my clients are, there's ways that you can tease that out into this quarterly review. But the idea is we're coming together to take a look at the whole portfolio. Usually this is an epic level or an initiative level conversation with the right people. And also so that you can be, you know, if you're a senior member or you're a leader, a lead project manager, or you're a manager in these areas, these are collaborative functions where all the right people, it's on cadence. We know it's once a quarter, maybe it's in February, May, and August. There's a reason that they put it in the middle of the quarter if you get into the tactical details. But the idea is we need to have these conversations collaboratively, make some decisions, review some metrics, right? And make sure we're preparing for the next quarter, if you will. We're examining our current quarter and preparing for the next quarter. It looks like you hit the heart symbol there. It sounds like that might resonate with you pretty well, Allie. Is that true?
No, this seems like an ideal way of managing not just expectations, but that collaboration, especially when you do have that many portfolios and those, you know, and not enough money to go around.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in that strategic portfolio review, those are the kinds of, if you've got the right people and they're in, those are the kinds of conversations that you can really take a look at. Because remember, inside each portfolio, you probably have, I don't know what you're in your world, but programs, several programs, teams of teams, collection of people, right? A collection of people delivering some kind of value in there. And that's how you determine, right? Prioritization can be talked about there. Now you'll notice down in the monthlies, down in the month columns, you'll see there's a sync that goes on, and all they're doing is, that's execution, right? In the review, we're making some decisions, we're looking at some things, we're getting ready for the next quarter, and then you have a monthly meeting. Maybe, and I'll be honest with you, that's the minimal. Most of my portfolio syncs, although we call that something different. They're about twice a month. Sometimes even in some dire situations, they'll go weekly. but the reality is, it's about twice a month, and it's where they're, you're bringing those leaders, the project leaders, the program leaders, those program maybe they're directors in your org, together to say, okay, are we on track? Are we executing on the strategy that we discussed in the quarterly? Or how's it going, right? And we're having that. And it's always, just remember, it's always meant to be a collaborative. The three representatives, if they're not there, it starts to break down. We start falling back into that, loudest voice. We start falling back into those bad habits of this siloed. We're not organizing around value anymore. We're now organizing around leaders, right? Hierarchical leaders. Does that make sense? Chris, do you want to throw anything in that?
Yeah, I just think that I think this concept is fantastic. The little gold things you've got there, right, represent, if you were truly using SAFE, right, represent the art ceremonies, right? The PI planning, the program increment, or we're going to map out what we do for each quarter. I think that where I've seen struggles in a lot of organizations has been getting those people into those monthly meetings, so that when they go into the strategic portfolio review, they're prepared and up to date. There's a lot of, because I'm going to be a little sarcastic here, because I am king of digital marketing. Therefore, I'm going to state once a year what I'm going to do, and I don't need to be engaged. You just make it happen. And in reality, it's not that. It's a series of small changes in that direction as you go that you need to be engaged with. And if the leadership's not engaged, this all falls apart, right? I mean, you need them. We want them to be there so that they can have the background and make those priority decisions, rather than waiting and sometimes I've seen decisions delayed for 2 months, 3 months at a time, because the leaders not in these meetings, they're not following this. So type of
I think I'm facing that problem every day myself today in my current world. Yeah, absolutely. Getting the right leader and getting the time commitment, Ali, to your point in chat, it's the struggle for all of us. It's real all the time, right? At the end of the day, if we don't have the buy-in. And that's why you have to take these with a grain of salt, because this is a perfect model. I love that, but it's not how it executes in the real world. It very rarely, and it takes a lot of alignment that in my journey, I've only had that real true alignment one time out of 11 clients. Most of the time I'm battling just to get alignment. And that was because the client started the company as a scaled agile company, right? A very lean. I mean, you don't see that very often. I mean, the CEO was a scaled agile person, right? And much smaller scale, not a Fortune 500. So, yeah, it's a good point. Not a government entity. So you're going to see here there's some key ceremonies. We don't have to go into all of this. We already really talked about this. If you're looking to get into what are the kinds of things we're going to do in those ceremonies, really, this is it, right? The big purpose of the strategic is to get that alignment, right? And check on the health of a portfolio, financially, capacity-wise, commitment-wise. Are we doing what we said we're going to do? And at the end of the day, those syncs, that's just moving it forward. That's a working session. I like one of the things that Chris called out about, you have to be prepared for these. one of the things that we do when we implement them, which takes time, is understanding how does the portfolio sync feed the portfolio review? And what are the artifacts and the outputs, right, that come out of that engagement, which of course requires alignment and attendance by the right leaders, the right people. Otherwise, you don't get the artifacts ready in time so that you can inform the review, right? And that is a huge challenge. Like everything I do, I always say, hey, listen, start real small, solve a real pain point. Don't worry about this, although we're teaching a concept, but at the end of the day, you start small and get your alignment first. Alignment always has to come first, in my opinion, and then you start, what is the pain point we're going to solve? Can we solve it there? Providing purpose is the key. Yes, absolutely. You've got to help them understand what's in it for them. Which comes back, Allie, to that pain point. What can I do for you? Leader, person that is, I'm trying to coach or influence. What is your pain, and here's how we might be able to solve it. Do that little bit, and you'll start to get, the light bulb will come on, and they'll start seeing some of the value as you go forward. Just, the only thing I want to say here about, you remember there was this participatory budgeting. We already talked a lot about this. All that means is we're budgeting in a new way. We're meeting more often. Maybe we're funding value streams instead of projects. We're funding portfolios. Maybe if we don't have value streams, we're funding the portfolio. What we're looking for is that everybody participates. We're budgeting more frequently, and we're investing in stability, not, my project's over, I need to move people. We're trying to get away from that model. That model to me is one of the most destructive that we have in terms of getting people to high performance. And budgeting impacts this in such a big way. It's often the last thing we talk about, and it's the last thing enterprises ever want to tackle because it is a very complex subject. But how we budget is very, very key to the conversation. Does that make sense, Allie? Is that okay? Everything still with us? I know I'm watching the time here, so I want to make sure we get you out on time at 1.
Yeah, nope, everything's tracking. Thank you.
Okay, great. And we appreciate you hanging in there with us. All right, so how do we do these things? Some of the tools of Lean Portfolio, there's a lot of tools that you can use out here. This is just a simple Kanban system. When we talk about visualizing what's going on at the portfolio level, we might be tracking epics on this board, business cases, initiatives, projects, whatever you're using. The idea here is that we have some form that we can show. Here's the activities, the things that we do. Here's the journey of the initiative, the epic, the feature, whatever it is that you're tracking. And here's its journey, its life cycle, right? It starts in the funnel. We go through a reviewing piece. We may analyze that piece of work. We're making some decisions. And then we're going to get it ready to start work on, and it's going to go into a portfolio backlog. Usually that's epics, depending on what kind of Agile you're doing. It may not be. I've done epics, I've done initiatives. I've even done a Kanban board with old school projects before. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's just a bundle of work. And then of course somebody starts to do that work. That's where implementing comes in. And you can see, if you were to read this whole slide, you can see we're going into a lot of little practices and little tools that are in there for us to help us with each of these phases. But the reality is we're just trying to visualize. We can see where things slow down or where something's sitting too long. Like if it's taking too long in analyzing to get work through there, why? We can ask that question. We can see it's a collection of things that we want to make sure are getting done in this life cycle of an epic, in this case, or whatever it is, the piece of work that we're tracking on the tool. Does that make sense? Chris, you want to add anything to that? Pretty straightforward. Allie, I know you've been trained. You said you were trained, but not leveraging. I don't know if you're using Kanban in any other context today. But if you, in Scaled Agile, we use it at every tier. Squads use it, programs use it, and portfolios use it. I used it for chores for my kids, so I'm pretty hardcore, but I'm just sharing probably too much information. We used to have a Kanban board on our refrigerator on the freezer door. That's how hardcore I am.
Hey, that's where I have my Kanban for the kids. But yes, we do use Kanban, and we've been working in Jira and trying to get everybody trained up, which is, another one of those difficult conversations about budgeting is everybody needs to be trained.
Absolutely. Good one. Chris, did you want to add?
No.
All right. We're getting on the home stretch here. So in the sake of time, I'm looking at the clock over here. We've just got a minute. So we'll go ahead and push past this one. The intent here is to, what I would love for you to do is just think back through how some of these things can maybe help you or impact you in a way, something that you could put into use. And then I always get the question, how do we do this? Where do we start? I love this adoption roadmap. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's SAFE. SAFE uses this one, and I've actually edited this one a little bit myself. But the idea here is just there's some things you can do from left to right. You can see, remember, we talked a lot about you got to get alignment. We've got to get executives and leadership to buy in. There's a lot of little details here that are available to you if you want to take it a little bit deeper. But the idea is to get aligned. Let's get organized. And we're going to do some strategy, right? We're going to do some things that we're going to create probably that strategy meeting, right? And this is a step-by-step through. Here's some of the things you can do in this kind of adopting a leaner way of managing a portfolio. You don't have to do all of those things, and I would recommend you do it very, very small, very slowly, but that is a tool that's out there for you. All right, so if this last thing, this is kind of the feedback loop for us here. And Ali, you don't have to enter it in the tool if you want to just talk. It's just us. Did anything resonate well with you? Did you learn anything, something practical that you could use, that you could take away? This is a webinar, so it's not a full-blown training, but I'd love to get that feedback from you. Is there something here that could help you in your day-to-day?
I think really it was the purposes and those key conversations. And I think what I keep taking away from so far several of the trainings that I've participated in, especially with Agile Meridian, is the importance of those ceremonies and the routines and getting people used to showing up when they should show up, being prepared to have the discussions, and walking away with the purpose. So if we're here to make a decision, let's make a decision. If we're here to have a discussion, be prepared to have a discussion.
Yeah, that's, you have to drive every one of those ceremonies is driven by an agenda, and that agenda is in execution. That's the key. Everyone that's participating needs to understand the agenda, their part in the agenda, and also, taking a page out of, I believe it's, keep me honest here, Chris, I think it's Apple who has the DRIs, the directly responsible individual, so that you're not waiting months for a decision. That decentralization of decision-making at the ceremony and the agenda level has to be clearly empowered. To Chris's point earlier, that's a core requisite to those ceremonies. So I'm glad that was adding there was something there for you, Ali, to connect to. Chris, anything you want to add? I think we're at time, so I just want to wrap it up there.
Yeah, now's the time to start, right? I mean, you've just come out, if you think about where you're at in the cycle, you've just come out of the holidays, right? You're getting your feet underneath you. In 6 months, depending on when your fiscal cycle is, right? You've got somewhere between 3 and 6 months before you start the budgeting process again, right? And so now's the time to start thinking about these concepts and start trying to get alignment, because once you get in the budget process, it's all about the numbers. You need to get alignment now and start that process now so that you can be prepared when you get to that point. And even if you just take the work that you've done for the year end and you're just now starting, go ahead and do that, right? Just to ask that a retrospective or do a review at the end of the quarter, right? Just to get things started, right? Just, hey, how are we doing on this? I can't emphasize enough. You can't wait until you're ready to do your budget cycle, because people won't be prepared. They won't have done the groundwork that they needed to do. They'll view it as just additional work, right? So you have to lead up to it.
Yeah,
That'll shut up.
No, that's good. Yeah, I loved what you said about the retro. Find that pain point. We got to talk about that and get that alignment. Whatever the pain is, let's try to solve it, right? One step at a time. Right. Ali, any questions before we wrap it? Are you good to go? Hopefully this provided some value for your 1 hour break today.
No, it did. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys continuing with just one participant.
That's okay.
Thanks for coming.
Again. Hey, Chris, can you stick around real quick?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Thank you, Ali. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to get